Hi everyone, my name is Eric. I'm with Topology. My side job is also doing DeFi stuff with the Enterprise Ethereum Alliance. So today I'm just going to moderate this panel very quickly for y'all. So why don't we just do a quick round of intros? Just say your name, what you've been working on, that kind of thing.
Yeah, sure. My name is Andy, and I work at a project called Frax Finance. We kind of do everything in DeFi. We do stable coins. We also have our layer 2. We do permissionless lending markets, LSDs, and just a bunch of things in DeFi. So we like to call ourselves the decentralized bank of crypto. So that's kind of the punchline for us there.
Hey everyone, my name is Anton, and I lead the ecosystem growth side at Pendle. And Pendle is basically a yield tokenization protocol where we take any yield-bearing asset and split them into its yield and principal components such that they can be traded in its own markets. So we work with a slew of different yield-bearing assets. Some of them we've supported from Frax as well. But yeah, happy to be here. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm a big fan of both of your projects. I've lost money on both of them. It's been but in like a very fun way, you know. It's a
True DeFi degen.
It was my fault. It was not your platform's fault. Yeah. Maybe just really quickly, I'd love to know, just fun start. Like, what's the best food you've had at ETHDenver in the short time you've been here?
I like the steak here. STK Steakhouse was really good.
Okay.
I think I saw so many crypto people there, which was also kind of fun too. Pho is really good as well. Because the pho is very different in Korea than in North America, so really enjoyed it here.
Well, funny enough, I've been to many events, and I didn't really get the chance to eat out, as often. So most of my exposure here has been burgers and finger food. But I did get to try out like a Menya noodle house, which has been recommended, and there was several dinners hosted in Italian restaurants that were pretty good. So one of them was like Tavernata, which was pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, nice, great. Okay, maybe we can just jump right in. I think DeFi has probably had some of the best PMF and early growth usage in the space, but obviously everything has its limits, right? So, from your perspective or your project's perspectives, like, what does true scalability for the next tranche of work look like for DeFi projects?
I think for Frax, well, personally, I think scalability for us and in DeFi as a whole, I think, would be getting new users on board. I think there's a very big fair share of the pie that is not exposed to what DeFi is, just because I think it's something that's a lot harder to digest and delve into compared to other things. So in ways to kind of, I guess it depends on like the UX UI simplicity and kind of making this everything very seamless to onboard onto DeFi and tap into it. For example, if you take Frax, for example, there's a lot to digest there, right? We have, if you go through the documentation, it's very complex, and it's not very easily explained for someone to just tap right into, like what you can do with centralized exchanges or meme coin trading and etc. So to make that easier, I think is basically what everyone in DeFi is trying to solve, but unfortunately it's a very, very tough hurdle to kind of go over.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, right? I believe that the biggest use case around blockchains and crypto in general is still finance. And when we see the other verticals, whether it be AI, DeepIn, and what have you out there, it kind of like coalesces into finance in some form. So when we talk about DeepIn, for example, and Puffball, where you can kind of like vape to earn, right? Basically, you're kind of like earning something financial, and maybe that in itself can be a derivative that can be used in the rest of DeFi, right? But DeFi in itself is very esoteric. Like, there's, if only you're DeFi savvy, do you get to really participate in this? But in a way, this different verticals helps scale DeFi in that sense, because now you have the introduction of AI, which, one of their intents is to be able to make this more accessible. You basically just have prompts and they can deploy strategies for you. And, when you interact with other things like, whether it be, like DeSci, for example, or decentralized science or whatever, it's all about aligning incentives, right, in order to make those verticals grow. So finance is that's how DeFi scales, right? We help scale other verticals by enabling that financializations in those different industries. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. I want to piggyback off that comment a little bit because I think it's really interesting. I think user experiences are a pretty challenging part of even starting to work with the ecosystem, right? And Let's make it a little spicy. We can talk about something that happened recently. Bybit,
Sure.
right? 1.5 billion, quite an amazing number hack. But I think what's underneath that is there are these centralized exchanges that are very accessible, right? And it's yes, you're trading cryptocurrencies, but it's more like a Web2 interface, right? It's way more accessible than say like getting on your MetaMask and connecting and trying to like start a yield strategy or something like along those lines. So how do you guys view the difference between like CeFi versus DeFi? Are you competing? Is there a convergence that's supposed to happen? Are you coordinating together? Like kind of how do you view that relationship as DeFi projects?
Okay. Yeah. So I think that both will always exist until the end of time, or until like blockchain, as long as blockchains exist. Both are good and both should exist, right? And I think that although they're both competing and collaborating in some form, I don't think one will trump the other in some way, right? And the main reason is because, like for centralized exchanges, the reason they're there is they're very convenient. It's easy enough to deposit and to trade many different assets that's outside of like an ecosystem, like let's say Ethereum. And for DEXs, they're kind of quite siloed in the blockchain that they're operating in, right? So if you're in Ethereum, then the DEX that you get to access are within Ethereum itself, and also the assets as well, right? And for something like centralized exchanges, that's where most of the liquidity kind of like flows through as well, and that's something that's hard for DEXs to compete, especially since there's a lot of DEXs that compete with each other as well within that same ecosystem, right? So in the end, I think that both will definitely exist, and it's just a matter of trade-offs. So for example, I'm more of an on-chain type of guy, and I rarely have funds in centralized exchanges, but I do see the benefits of like being able to trade there, especially if I would want to gain exposure to a certain type of asset and that's not available in a certain DEX, then I'll definitely use that. But other than that, if I really care for my security, if I really care about ownership of my own funds, then I keep them on-chain, and I use DEXs for all these other things that I care about. Yeah.
Anton's a degen.
Very much a degen. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think one really good case study that we could kind of look at is South Korea. Upbit, Bithumb, and all these big centralized exchanges in South Korea is like a prime example of like why, like what's kind of wrong, but also how we benefit from this. Everything is centralized in centralized exchanges. It's very hard to find someone who the demographic compared to the people that use DEXs is very, very low. But in a nutshell, like it's nice because they get exposed to cryptocurrency because of centralized exchanges, which means that with their own due diligence, and if they want to, they can do their own research and go into DeFi, learn about DEXs, right? And I'm not sure if it's really a convergence, but I think as like a DeFi protocol and like someone in DeFi, it's kind of our objective, and we should make it our mission to kind of bring these people over and to educate these people that there's something like this that exists, just because of everything that Anton said, like for your own security and etc. So yeah, I think that's kind of my take, that it's not necessarily a convergence, but we also should have our own mission to bring those users onto like DEXs and DeFi in general.
Yeah. I'd just like to add something there as well. I think it's also like for protocols like us, right, where we build on-chain, it's also the type of users we'd want to support in the future. Like for something like centralized exchanges, right, I mean, like there's AI there, and AI can exist for centralized exchanges, but they're mainly trading on an order book, right, and maybe against users, other users, and funds, right? But for something that's on-chain, you're talking about money Legos. So when you deploy AI agents, and there'll be a time where there could be more AI agents than there are users, then that means they're taking advantage of all these different DeFi protocols, including DEXs, and making strategies out of them, right? So, and since everything's on-chain, everything's just on the smart contract, it makes things more accessible for an AI agent to create strategies upon. So I think there will be a time where we probably could see even more on-chain activity, mainly because of this burgeoning or explosion of AI agents. Yeah.
So, I mean, going off of that, do you feel like when you are thinking about how to bring the next million users or so, do you think that the agentic experience is like a big key player of that?
Yeah, for sure.
Of that wave.
So I don't think we should just focus on building for users. We should actually be building for AI, right? So like in this conference itself, right, one of the core ideas people have been exploring is that how do you bootstrap new chains right now? It's more of like, doing campaigns, like something like Boyko, which has successfully happened like in the previous few weeks. But now you can actually take AI agents, bootstrap initial activity there and liquidity, and that's basically kind of like how you can measure the success of a launch now. So it's not necessarily users now, because what we really care about as DeFi protocols is liquidity and volume, right? And if that can be done by AI agents themselves, then that's good for everyone.
I'm gonna assume that when you talk about AI agents, it looks a little different from like the AI16Z coin or like fart coin. Right?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
It's the real AI, basically. Yeah, less memes, more real stuff.
Gotcha.
And that's really interesting that you brought that up, because
Yeah.
one of the roadmaps that we have for Frax is actually creating a new tech stack called AIVM, because we have this, well, internally we had this vision of like AI agents is kind of the ultimate solution to bringing masses onto DeFi, just making things as easy as possible so that they can tap into it, see the yield, and then they're more motivated to actually learn themselves about what it is, or they can even use the AI agent to ask. But ETHDenver was a great experience because I got to talk to a lot of builders, and they had this. It was usually the same, that AI agents with on-chain capabilities will at least take 2 to 3 years for it to be very safe, because at the end, like, you have to. When you're deploying funds on it, that's when it becomes very scary, right? So I think right now the usage of AI could be like, without on-chain capabilities, maybe as a starter, to explain like what is what, like, like when you go into certain staking vaults, it's like, where is this yield coming from, and it just tells you, instead of just digesting everything together, so that it just simplifies the onboarding and the user experience.
I love that. I want to shift gears a little bit. Maybe ask you guys, more project-specific questions. So, Andy, maybe just going off of Frax, like, you guys are doing a lot. Fractal, you switched to stablecoin recently, or I don't know if that was recent, but it's no longer algo-backed, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, where is the new chain going towards? And like, you even just mentioned the AIVM. Like, would really love to understand, what's kind of like the strategy or where you guys see the future.
Yeah, I think we've always just been very focused on stablecoins and building DeFi like tech stacks on top of it, right? So, and then Fractal was kind of, our L2 was that vision of bringing this all over and becoming like an ultimate DeFi chain, DeFi focused chain. Well, we like to call it general purpose, because in our views, general purpose is kind of DeFi. So that was our core vision, and it still is, growing the ecosystem and building our L2 there. And then also making sure that our yield-bearing stablecoins, or stablecoins in general, can be like deployed onto other chains to kind of foster the DeFi sector of different chains. That's one thing. The AI VM is a very long-term goal. We just want to make sure that it's very easy to deploy anything AI on Fractal. That's something that we're working on. We also rebranded our tokens very recently with a hard fork. So Frax is now going to be called Frax USD. It just has a very good like the USD in it. So, and though very small, we think this is a very very big change that's going to be in our favor for a very long time. And that idea actually came from like a community member for years and years, and we decided to kind of change all of that. It's gonna take time for me to personally get used to, because we do have a lot of assets. And we actually were changing our tokenomics. There's a very big proposal out right now where the community is giving us feedback on the discussion. So we're going to do a bunch of tokenomics change with like tail emissions. So there's a lot more coming. There's a lot more coming. So our vision's still the same. Yeah.
Good take. And for Pendle, I feel like I don't know if you were with the project when Olympus DAO was a thing, and
Yep.
we like
I was there since the start.
that was like my
so,
favorite
yeah.
thing ever, right? Like 200,000%
Yeah,
APY.
exactly.
Obviously, Pendle's the opposite of that, where it's like more sustainable, actual growth, right? I mean, but how do you guys at the same time balance the need for incentivizing users with like high APYs and yield, but also like having it be a long-term thing? And like what are the growth strategies you guys
Yeah.
kind of pursuing at the moment?
So the story of Pendle was actually a motivation behind something like Olympus, especially during the last DeFi summer when we had, the yams, the sushis, the sashimis with printing more than 100,000 APYs out there.
Good
And
times.
there really wasn't a tool out there where you can basically fix your rates or kind of like bet against them or hedge against them. So that's kind of like the idea of how Pendle came to be, right? So I think for Pendle, we basically support many different types of yield-bearing assets, and they can get crazy. Where with maybe now it's a bit more sensible, where you can see probably like 100% or 200% APYs. But and maybe that could be a result because of the points mania. But at least now you have a tool where you can take sides of each side of the trade, right? Where you can be bullish on these yields, or you can be short on these yields, right? By basically realizing a fixed rate instead. So in a way, right? If you have if there is an asset out there that is not crazy in APYs, then you can basically leverage Pendle to be able to make sensible choices on how you can strategize around those APYs. And that's the type of tool that we want to introduce in the market.
I have one more question for you specifically to Pendle. Are you guys considering RWAs at all?
Yeah, we actually have supported a bunch of RWAs. So we've supported assets from Sky. There's SUSDS and USDS. There are the different types of stable assets. Like we have Usual, which has done very well on Pendle as well. So basically, all these different types of assets, including RWA, always produce some type of yield, right? Whether they come from treasury bonds or maybe private credit or whatever, as long as they're able to bring them on chain and able to accrue that yield in those assets, then you can definitely split them on Pendle and take a position on the direction of that yield. So it's not just RWA, but really any type of vertical that has yield, we can work with that. Yeah.
Any yield, I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. This has been really fun. I just have one more thing to ask you guys before you take off. I just want one hot take from each of you. It's organic hot take.
Like anything
on
within the
DeFi.
space?
Maybe about DeFi.
Okay. Huh. Let's see.
Just try not to get fired.
Within the bounds of
Within the
reasonableness.
bounds of reasonability. Okay. So, maybe on the top of my mind, right, we've seen an explosion of AI, which is, the conversation we've been seeing in the last few months. But not only then that, there is a huge explosion of different chains, right? Different L2s, L1s, and L3s even, right? And I think it's been a struggle for a lot of DeFi protocols to have presence in any of them, mainly because the core problem for DeFi protocols, including to your earlier question, is that liquidity always gets fragmented, right? So for us, it's please less chains and more economic activity in the core ones that you like to see. But in the event that there are, more chains out there, which is happening, and I guess we should, we need to have solutions out there which makes liquidity fragmentation much less, right? But also to reduce the risk of being able to bridge those liquidity over, right? Because of course, you can have chain abstraction type of solutions where you can easily bridge liquidity over, but that adds to the risk or layers of risk to whatever liquidity that you're hosting in your protocol. So there's good things and bad things with all the solutions being put out there. But in the end, as a user, do you care about the risks that you're being exposed to when you're partaking with such solutions, right? So if, let's say, I deploy in some L3 out there and then they say, oh, everything's kind of we use maybe some messaging protocol like either Chainlink CCIP or layer 0 or whatnot, but in the end you're kind of also beholden to the security of this underlying protocols, right? So if something out there is more enshrined or native to the chain itself, being able to leverage the underlying security of, let's say, Ethereum itself, then that would be the best of for everyone. So in other words, right, I think that too much chains, and I think we should just all figure this out all first before we explode more on the chain expansions. But yeah,
pretty reasonable hot take.
Yeah. So yeah.
Second martial law, another impeachment in Korea.
Yeah. Good times recently.
No, for me, I think it just it's good and scary for me that the AI narrative is continuously fueling away, and there's literally so many AI agents that are being built out every day. And I think it's only a matter of time that one of those ones that actually manage assets get hacked, and then it's where do you go from there? How do we ever now? Because then you can't. I think it's inevitable that it'll happen, but when that happens, it's how do we now move forward in trusting any AI agent? And how, no matter how good the team is, no matter how vetted it is, and I don't think users are gonna ever trust an AI agent as much as we are doing it now. And it's kind of scary how much trust we put into AI agents that are not really very battle tested because it's so new. So I think in a matter it's within the next, maybe this year, early next year. I mean this year and early next year, an AI agent that has quite a bit of influence will do something malicious either. And I'm very scared for that.
I want to add to this as well, right? Because for an AI agent, if they're able to acquire a bunch of, let's say, DAO tokens, and then suddenly they can make crazy proposals, right, on the protocol itself, right? And maybe there could be ensuing drama where some proposal is winning because they have so much voting power, but it goes against like the mandate of the protocol themselves. But since you're basically like on chain and you're kind of like fulfilling all these commitments, right? Then what do you say to that type of AI proposal then? So yeah, maybe AI might open things to governance attacks now, but it will be an interesting like set of events that will happen maybe in the future, which would be. Yeah, will just be interesting to see, I guess. Yeah.
And like that's why I'm so much more bullish when the market is actually bearish for builders to build on. Like you see a lot of great projects actually come during the bear market, and then they actually start the bull market or they excel in the bull market, right? So when there's always this narrative going on, or when the bull market is there, everyone's trying to work as fast as possible to deploy and launch, and that's always like a very scary thing to me. So that's why I'm very concerned, to be honest. But I'm still very bullish on AI and AI agents. I'm a very big fan.
I love that take. I personally think we just need to get the failure over with. Like we need the malicious thing to happen very quickly, and then we can keep building from there.
Yeah.
Right? Like that. But I do think it's like going to happen. I totally agree at this point. I'm terrified as well. I just hope it's like not too sizable. But yeah.
We need more AI Sam CZ Sons and Zach XBTs,
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. Okay. Well, that's everything for today, guys. Thank you so much for joining us today. And round of applause for our DeFi panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.